Ladies and gentlemen, ghouls and goblins, and freaks and weirdos alike, welcome to the Halloween season, a time of spooks, frights, and most importantly of all, candy! Unless, of course, you have horrible teeth problems like I do. In that case, you're just reminded of the thing you can't eat. Anyways, on a lighter note, today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. Creepypastas. More specifically, one in particular. That being sonic.exe. Yeah, you read the title, I'm not gonna waste any more time. We're just gonna get right into this. But to understand it, we first need to understand why sonic.exe was popular in the first place. Spooky Sonic, that's why. Yeah, looking back, this pasta has aged incredibly poorly. And it's also one of the reasons why the Troll Pasta Wiki was founded in the first place, so, yeah. The pasta itself is quite irrelevant to a lot of the later Sonic.exe lore, ironically enough. Honestly though, its legacy cannot be understated. It is one of the biggest fan-made Sonic things that most people know about, or did know about anyway. Well, it's either that or Sonichu. But then again, that's an entirely different rabbit hole with Chris Chan that I don't feel like going down today. Also not gonna be mentioning any fan-made characters that aren't creepypasta related, like Cold Steel the Hedgehog or Sonichu. To be honest, that is an entire topic I could make an entire video on in general. But enough talk, let's get right into this with Part 1, the original. It kinda sucked, to be honest. The original creepypasta, despite being one of the founding pastas that made the whole genre what it is today, or at the time anyway, is not one that has aged very well. A lot of that kinda has to do with the fact that really the main reason it got popular has a lot to do with the narrators who actually sold this story. They did a really good job at actually selling this and getting rid of a lot of the bloat and crap. If you actually read the story yourself, you're gonna find that there's a lot of horrible writing cliches and just general bad writing. The protagonist is dumb as bricks, if that's even the right word. I'm pretty sure someone with actual brain damage could be smarter than this idiot. I mean, his friend sends him an ominous note saying, "Please destroy this, it's bad." And he's like, yes. Today I shall put in disc that could be haunted. Like, his friend says, destroy it, it's bad, and he just does it anyway. Let's just stop for a moment and just pretend this isn't haunted. This could have a virus. Bro just straight up just clicked an executable file without thinking. Are you an imbecile, or are you just that curious? Either way, there's a saying, curiosity killed the cat, for a reason. Because curiosity is a kind of a bad thing if it's taken to its logical extreme. But either way, the protagonist just keeps going even after they see the bloody Sonic. Like, clearly something is wrong, yet they're still going. And the cherry on top of it all? The bloody Sonic plushie that came out of the game. How does that happen? I don't know. Good question, I'd like to know that myself. Hey, that's an obligatory Lord X construction reference! I'm not gonna be making too many of those, don't worry. But that does not mean that this story didn't leave a legacy. Or, well, a crappy legacy, but a legacy nonetheless. I'm not kidding, this is also one of the reasons the Troll Pasta Wiki was founded. For those of you who don't know what the Troll Pasta Wiki is, the Troll Pasta Wiki is essentially the place for all the terrible creepypastas that plagued the wiki at the time, and some ones that are intentionally bad and just kind of meant to be funny, you know? There's a lot of them on there. A lot of them were just kind of so bad that they just did not meet a certain quality, and this, you got sent to the Troll Pasta Wiki. I would say this and Happy Happy, which is over 2 hours long. No, I am not kidding! It is over 2 hours long! Although the creator was not too happy about his pasta being moved to the Troll Pasta Wiki. He also kinda threw a bit of a tantrum about it as well. Kinda claiming it was the greatest thing known to man and that all the Sonic.exe fans should rise up for this injustice. that his pasta was moved to a different wiki because it wasn't very good. Yeah. This is how you don't take criticism, folks. And with that, a game was made based on it, and an official sequel. It was even worse than the original, and the original's pretty bad. This one kind of actually featured an actual real story, but is like cults and like detectives trying to find a murder. Let me remind you, this is about an evil haunted Sonic game, and yet we're talking about cults, detectives, and a bunch of other things. It's also the origin of Lord X, technically, although this Lord X and the Lord X that I'm sure a lot of you who actually know of him are familiar with are slightly different. The only thing that the original and the newer version of Lord X have in common is the name and their origin. They're both beings from the void, they're both named Lord X, and they're both Sonic, basically. Or they both take the form of Sonic, rather, I should specify. But the Lord X in later iterations is kind of very different and kind of more or less his own thing. We're gonna get to him as well as his other evil Sonic counterpart, Xenophanes, in his own part. So for now, we're gonna move on to the game. The game was later based on the creepypasta, and yeah, it's not very good. I would show my own footage, but honestly, I'm just gonna use some old Markiplier footage, to be honest, because, honestly, I think it kinda does a better job than I ever could. Really, this is a time capsule of a certain time on the internet. A bygone age, but one I'm sure a lot of people are nostalgic for. Of those old creepypasta-based games. Fun fact, people still make .exe games, and it's all thanks to this guy. As ugly as he might be, he definitely left an impact on the internet. Whether that's a good thing or not, that's not up for me to decide, now is it? The game itself is kind of pretty meh. It's mostly just walking simulator. You go from point A, you get killed by the evil Sonic, you move on, repeat this 3 times. Except you're not actually playing Sonic, you're playing as Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik. And there's basically nothing they can do, they just kinda die. This isn't really scary so much as it is, oh, scary! There's nothing you can do. This isn't even really a horror game, really. If this was a horror game, the entire goal would be basically to avoid him, and then basically try your best not to get killed by him. And basically the goal would be to survive, but that wouldn't be, very spooky now, would it? Honestly, I'm kinda surprised that no one's really tried anything like that. It's a revolutionary formula, I know, actually making a game out of a horror game. Well, either that or making it insanely difficult for no reason, which a lot of them tend to do. But that's irrelevant. Whether we like it or not, this piece of media has influenced a lot of the indie horror games. Mostly in the crappy variety, but still influencing nonetheless. There's a lot of EXE knockoffs out there, and a lot of them are just kinda really poorly put together. You can definitely tell this is just someone's first game, and they're just kinda messing around. In general, it's not like the original is a masterpiece or anything, but it's alright for what it is. Honestly, that's all you can ask for. It also got a sequel, technically, in the form of Sally.exe. Who is Sally, you might ask? Sally Acorns from Sonic. Yeah, she hasn't really appeared in any other media outside of the comics or the TV show. Why exactly have they not used this character? I don't know. Honestly, that's a good question. I have no clue why they literally just leave this character out to dry, yet they're insistent on adding all these new characters that no one cares about. Either way, it's kinda alright. But that brings us to the part you're actually here for. You're wanting to know about who the newer versions of this character are. And that being Lord X and Xenophanes. Which brings us to... Part 2, Lord X and Xenophanes. And who they even are in the first place. Lord X and Xenophanes are basically better versions of their original counterparts by quite a large margin. Xenophanes especially is way better than the original ever could be. The interpretation of Lord X especially is a much better take on the character. Especially since there's actually an explanation as to why they're Sonic. They're just big fans. Yeah, these guys are just huge fanboys of Sonic the Hedgehog. It fixes one of the biggest problems with the original, and that's why is the schmuck a Sonic anyway? Why? Well, truth is, he's a fan. He just likes the design and wanted to be like him. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. Especially with Lord X especially, he's just kind of a trickster. Even my own interpretation of the character is not too far off from the original, only more comedic in nature. Lord X by and large is not the type to just outright kill you. He's more the type to just mess with you and make you think you're safe and then strike at the last moment. He basically treats the world like it's his own personal plaything. And honestly, that's a much better interpretation of the character. He's not stuck in the video game, he basically just limits himself to the video game for a bit more of a challenge. It's a lot more fun that way to him. And honestly, that's kind of a way better interpretation of what he could be. He's basically just a bored god that just got... you know what? Today I shall become Sonic, and I shall stick around for the day. Xenophanes especially is just a huge fucking fanboy, and he's just kind of a goofball. I honestly kind of love this interpretation. While the original tried too hard, the newer version at least has some semblance of self-awareness to it. And honestly, I think that works so well for these characters. Because giving them some semblance of self-awareness is probably the best thing you can do for this. And honestly, it makes them so much more tolerable. That's not to say Xenophanes and Lord X aren't portrayed as big threats. They are portrayed as big threats. Xenophanes especially having a crystallized form, which I gotta say, is actually a pretty cool design. He's still a bit goofy looking, but you know what, he's got a cool design at least. And you can't fault a cool design. You can fault a wasted design, however. Never forget that. Anyways, these definitely are a better interpretation of the character, as I said. But yeah, in general, these technically are the originals, or at least in a version. The original is still technically his own character, but Xenophanes kind of just took him over. Also, fun fact, there was a cut line actually mentioning the original in Lord X construction. I didn't think it was funny, so I just removed it. Either way, I do think these are much better interpretations of the characters. In general, keep the original vibe while not straying too far away, while still making good improvements and necessary improvements at that. These are way better versions of the original in every way, shape, and form. Especially some of the versions in FNF. But we'll get to Friday Night Funkin' near the end, don't you worry. Oh, that does bring us to the next part. That being... Part 3. The Miscellaneous. And also some officials are in here too, don't worry. Okay, let's get the boring one out of the way. Tails Doll. Yeah, this character has basically never been used. It got a small role in the comics and was a guest character in Sonic R. A game that most people do not remember because it's kind of terrible. Ironic how a racing game in featuring Sonic the Hedgehog being terrible. Although they did later get some pretty decent ones with Transformed. They're not bad games, they're just kind of forgettable, especially since they're kind of just Mario Kart clones. But in general, the Tails Doll is basically just Bloody Mary and other video game rumors. Basically, you put those two in a blender and you get the Tails Doll curse. You do this ridiculously difficult thing and then it'll come out of the screen and kill you. Yeah, it's classic terrible writing. But honestly though, the one you probably wanted to hear more about is Majin. Because technically, he is actually from an official Sonic game, but also not really. What do I mean by that? Well, he technically doesn't appear in-game, at least the Tails Doll at least appears in-game. He's actually in the sound test menu. And there's a lot of neat secrets in the sound test menu. You got this Chibi Sonic, who's really cute. You got the DJ Sonic. You got the Batman Sonic. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the sound test menu. There's a lot of Easter eggs and little things that they just hid in there. But probably the one that most people know about is Fun is Infinite with Sega Enterprises. At least that's what the Japanese text roughly translates to. Although most people think it's signed by Majin, which means devil or magic, and I don't think this guy's doing magic anytime soon. Though I don't know. Maybe he does a sideshow. We would never know. According to someone, I don't remember who exactly, this was apparently a mistranslation, and it does not actually mean devil. So yeah, this isn't signed by the devil, everyone. You can go home now. It's not signed by the devil. We're fine. Although, to be honest, this screen is a lot creepier than it honestly should be because of the music. Fun fact, the music is actually the American boss fight music. I have no idea why that music is so creepy, or why they even thought it was a good idea to make it that creepy. But, yeah. Although Majin himself is just kind of more meant to be goofy, although I imagine the main reason this came off as creepy was because of the mistranslated text, and the fact that, the music just kind of really made the scene just kind of more creepy than it should be. He's just kind of a goofy guy when you really just take a moment to look at him. Although, apart from the sound test menu, he has made no official appearances. Not even Easter eggs. This guy is basically irrelevant to Sega. Which is kind of a shame. I feel like they could have brought him back, at least as an Easter egg, at the very least. So the third and semi-official one is Fleetway Supersonic. And to be honest, there's a lot of lore from the Sonic comics with this guy. He also became his own character at some point, naming himself Scourge the Hedgehog, but that's an entirely different story that I'm not going to get into. To keep this short and blunt, the entire thing with this guy is that he's basically evil. Supersonic in the Fleetway comics is basically just a completely different character that just takes over Sonic's body when he becomes Supersonic. He's also kind of more deranged, into kind of an asshole. Honestly, it's kind of weird seeing this interpretation. When you see a Supersonic, you kind of just imagine, oh, that's just his ultimate state, not, oh, this is a completely different character. I have not read the Fleetway comics, so I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they wanted to put a limitation on it. Like, oh, Sonic can't just use his Deus Ex Machina and just win the day. But at the same time, I feel like there's better ways of getting around that. I mean, after all, Ben 10 did it pretty well. Why can't Sonic? Either way, that brings us on to our next guy, which is No More Innocence. Now, who is No More Innocence? No More Innocence is basically a demon that lives in a Sonic the Hedgehog cartridge. Wait. Stay with me now. Except he basically makes you addicted to it, and basically just feeds off your life energy. Yeah, this guy basically just feeds off addiction. Imagine if this guy basically possessed a smartphone. He would basically be unstoppable. He'd basically doom the entire world in about 2 seconds. Yeah, maybe it's for the better that this guy sticks to a cartridge. He's actually kinda got a decent design if I'm being honest. It's quite creepy, yet kind of more in that it's so uncanny. Especially some of the more designs where he looks more human, especially since he can shapeshift. Yeah, one of his abilities is shapeshifting. Basically, this guy is just a living embodiment of your sleep paralysis demon, basically. And honestly, I think that's kind of why he works so well. He is basically just your sleep paralysis demon, just taking the form of Sonic. There's also Starved Eggman, who ate some Mobian meat and became obsessed with it. Why is his skin red? I don't know, that's never explained. No, literally, that's never explained in the story. He also turned Metal Sonic into a walking oven and actually killed Sonic in this canon. It's quite morbid. Although again, why is his skin red? That is never explained. Period. Why? What's the explanation other than creepypasta scary? He also got a spin-off of Starved Squidward, which is, has a very complicated name I'm not gonna try and pronounce because I'm gonna butcher it horribly. So I'm gonna put it on the Mimo Vision instead. And then there's Rewrite. Rewrite is basically a demon that believes he is Sonic. And honestly, I think his design is insanely clever. I found him goofy as hell at first, but honestly, that's the point. The point is that he basically looks like a goofball you wouldn't think anything about. Until you look further into his design, and then you realize, oh wow, that's actually really clever. And then you realize, wow, this is actually quite well done. Rewrite's basically just a really clever version of the original, but slightly different. I especially like his introductory mod versus Rewrite, because in that mod, he basically just kind of stands there and be's all goofy, until he breaks the fourth wall, kills the protagonist of that game, and straight up just talks to you. Although the broken English is just kind of funny. Because, yeah, it's not very grammatically correct, but yeah, it's actually kind of clever when you think about it. He's basically intentionally goofing around so you don't think about it. He's basically betting on the fact that you basically don't see him as a threat in the slightest, and then he gets you. That's really clever, actually! Like, holy shit! Like, that's well done! You basically have this character that's just kind of appears to be a goofball, but wants you to believe he's a goofball. That's not really been done too many times, and honestly, it's really well done. I'm kind of surprised. I honestly just kind of thought he was more of a goofball, but that's just really good. He's a really well done version of the character. There's also Fatal Error, who actually, funny enough, is more well known because he uses the Microsoft Sam text-to-speech voice. Although he's basically just a sentient glitch. That's basically his lore. He's basically just a sentient glitch that's also evil and wants to take your code and kill you. But he's evil. There's also a ton of other newer versions that are kind of more irrelevant. But I'm only going to talk about the one, namely because he's actually popped up in recent times, particularly in memes. That's 2017X. Honestly, he also believes he's Sonic, and honestly, he's just kind of a goofball. He's not a threat in the slightest, he's just kind of a goofball. Honestly, I just kind of love the idea that this guy just goes around and just pretends to be Sonic, and fully believes he's Sonic. He is basically just the living embodiment of a Sonic LARPer, but failing horribly. And honestly, his design basically just sells that perfectly. He's honestly perfect for meme culture, and I'm honestly surprised it took people this long to start using him. But yeah, that's it. That's all. Or is it? Part 3.5. Friday Night Funkin'. To keep it short, sweet, to the point, FNF basically kept this entire thing alive and basically breathed new life into the characters. It did them justice quite well and actually made them quite appealing and cool. The mod teams behind these things typically did put in a lot of effort and a lot of work was put into these things. And yeah, they actually did a good job at actually representing the characters and actually doing a good job at bringing them to life. Well, the resurgence of sonic.exe has a lot to do with the FNF mods being so high quality and basically giving the characters new life. Especially the sprite work. I use these sprites all the damn time because they're just so damn good. Seriously. But hey, that's all for now. Cue the outro me. Oh hey, it's the outro crow here. I just want to say if my voice sounds a bit off from these recordings, that is because I was probably fighting a cold and didn't realize it. Either way, there's a poll in my community tab if you're interested, basically asking if you grew up with it, if you still enjoy it. It's not necessary, but it would actually be interesting to see people's opinions of it. So yeah, go check that out. Also, if I get enough comments, I will make the music used for this public. It's gonna be unlisted in a playlist, but if I get enough comments saying to make it public, I'll make it public. Anyways, like, subscribe, yada yada yada, you get the point. Anyways, that's all for now, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.